In Canada, one woman is killed in a violent act every other day. The spike in domestic violence that began during the pandemic is still on the rise. Numbers in Canada have leapt by 27% since 2019, and in Israel, the situation is just as critical, with 16 Israeli women already murdered this year. True to its mission, CHW is stepping up to support emergency services in Canada and Israel at this critical time. Help CHW empower victims of domestic violence by supporting the 27-hour SOS crowdfunding campaign. From August 22nd to 23rd, every dollar will be quadrupled when you donate online at chwsos.ca.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Menschwarmers. I'm Jamie. I'm here with my co-host Gabe. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful, stormy August evening that we're recording this.
It is stormy, huh?
Yeah, it's dark, It's stormy, blustery.
We are your bi-weekly look at the world of Jews and sports. Had some very nice feedback from our last episode, including an interview with Scrabble champ Josh Sokol. I've been playing a lot of online Scrabble since then. I will be
too.
honest.
I think it's been like a really it's been a really nice refresher to how exciting it can be to play Scrabble by yourself on the internet against the computer. I don't play other people. I just play the bot.
Oh, do you? I've been playing other people, and I do feel like there's probably more cheating going on than he let on. If you play very rapid, very small amount of time, I feel like it's hard to cheat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's always things that are up in the air. I feel like I always alternate between word games and number games. Sometimes I'm more interested in one or the other. So this is like a word game summer for me. It's 3 years ago when everyone was in the spelling bee, including me.
Yes,
anyways,
absolutely.
We have a very exciting interview this week. I know it is the dog days of summer right now, but we have a winter athlete on. And that is AJ Edelman, someone who we've been talking to for a while and sort of circling on having on. AJ is an Olympic athlete. He qualified for the Olympics back in 2018 as a skeleton racer, which is the head first face down luge.
Yeah, we talk about this sort of on the show, but it's the sort of sport that Jerry Seinfeld would describe as the athletes look like they're doing it against their will.
That's right. And he was not doing it against his will, but he has moved on now from skeleton to bobsled. And he attempted to put together a bobsled team for the last Olympic cycle, came as close to making it as he could. And we talked to him about that. And he is now sort of in the throes of going through the work of qualifying for the 2026 games, trying to get an Israeli sled into the Olympics and make that happen. And, it's really interesting to hear from him about sort of how complicated that is, how much money's involved, how much work is involved from him. He's a really bright guy. He's a MIT grad. I think an MBA from somewhere as well.
We've noticed
somewhere fancy.
And probably with the most proud parents we could find, a lot of the professional athletes that we focus on that are Jewish, I think they're sort of overrepresented in the Ivy Leagues compared to the general.
It's true. We had Ryan
Lavarnway
on. Ryan Lavarnway on, who is
talking about Craig Breslow, his Yale teammate.
Right, his Yale teammate.
We hear about that. I guess we talk about Max Homa a lot, who's a Berkeley grad. There's a lot of, I guess, higher education representation amongst the Jewish athlete class.
I like the idea of Jewish parents consenting to their kids playing Division I ball, but it's okay, but it's got to be at a top 20 school, maybe Duke. I'd love to talk to John Shayer someday and see how Duke's educational background factored into his decision to go there. But yeah, I think that was a really fun interview with AJ. That's going to take up most of the episode. So stick around for that. He was a really generous guest with his time, and we'll be following him. We're 3 years away, really. For 2.5 years away, I guess, from the 2026 games. And we'll be following him as he, gets going and gets working on the World Cup circuit to help bring an Israeli bobsled team to Milan, right? Milan 2026? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, going back to Italy for, since Turin, I guess it's been 24 years, 20 years exactly.
20 years,
since Turin. So back to Italy, back to the Alpine, the Italian Alps, very exotic but exciting world games. With, as we hope AJ, or as he calls himself, Aj, can have some success.
So before we get to that, any Jewish sports news you wanted to talk about? Things you wanted to talk about before we get to the interview?
A couple of exciting things I want to talk about. We've couple of things. As we talked about Scrabble, following up the Scrabble World Championships, Scrabble National Championships, North American Championships, sorry. The Scrabble World Championships were just awarded. And the winner of that was, you guessed it, Jewish. David Elder, who was previously the World Youth Scrabble Champion, as well as a professional poker player who was also very, very good at Scrabble. So another Jewish to that. Digging a little deeper into that, there is a excellent Wikipedia page for anybody who wants to read it. In the list of world champions of mind games.
Oh, wow.
And it's sort of a non-athletic world championship, which I think is extremely funny. There aren't as many Jews on that page as you'd think. It's a lot of like Stratago and math competitions. So it's fairly globally diverse and not a lot of North American Jews as we tend to follow on this program. But that's a really interesting piece of information in case anyone wants to follow. What about you? What's new in the world? I hear there's a Team Israel baseball player who's really raking these days.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Zach Geloff of the Oakland Athletics, who has really just been crushing since he came up. He was a member of Team Israel. We talked about him a little bit when he came up. His younger brother was recently drafted, and relatively early on, and that was pretty exciting as well. But Zach has been called up. He's plays all over the diamond, but mainly an infielder. And he was called up to Oakland, who is really just having like a historically bad year. They're 50 games under 500. So this is often a time when
50.
rookies get a chance. Yeah. Often a time when rookies get a chance to break through and sort of get good playing time. And Zach has really, played consistently pretty much since the All-Star break. He has gotten into, at the time of recording this, I think 26 games and is starting every day, really filling in at second base there. And he is just crushing it. I mean, he had 2 home runs on Sunday, bringing him to 8 on the year. He hit a double yesterday, I believe, as we're recording this, bringing him to 9 on the year. He's slugging .624, which is like, that is a big league slugger.
Apparently he is, what the big stat is as of today, he's the only player in the history of baseball to have 8 homers and 6 stolen bases in their first month of play.
Yeah, it is. He is really lighting the world on fire now. So unfortunately, it's happening with the A's. I guess he was hitting very well in the minors. He was hitting, very solidly, slugging .529 in Las Vegas. But the thin air, I guess, in the Pacific Coast League, tends to lead to inflated power stats, especially. He's hit throughout his career in the minor leagues. So he's hit well. He's hit for power, but this is like a real outburst. I think it means that he is going to be, presumptively be a starter next year in Oakland. There's no real doubt about that. But it's just really great to see him get off to this hot start. He is probably not going to play enough games to be in contention for Rookie of the Year, but it feels like if he were, then he would be, he'd be right there. So exciting to see. I mean, this is probably the best debut by a Jewish player in their rookie season since Ryan Braun won Rookie of the Year. I can't really think of anyone quite at this level. Kevin Pillar, when he came out, his first full season,
by any player in a very long time, as some of the stats would say. And we also want to, while we're talking about this, we know our friend of the pod, Spencer Horwitz, made his major league debut, but he's continued to rake as well after winning that International League Player of the Week award. His OBP on the season is up to an outrageous 441,
right,
with an OPS nearing the 1,000 mark. So it's a pretty big year for Jewish baseball prospects.
Yeah, I think that this is showing, some real strength up and down the order. Obviously we've had tougher showings from Max Fried, who's been dealing with injuries all year. Dean Kramer's been, part of a really impressive Orioles team, and he has been, a real contributor to that team. But maybe we're not likely to see a 3 or 4 Jews in the World Series this year, but a couple years from now, like I think we're seeing guys who are really going to contribute to their teams. Potentially be all-stars.
A Baltimore Atlanta World Series with a Fried Kramer game is
impossible.
Not impossible at all. Likely even, I think one could suggest.
I mean, Atlanta is certainly the presumptive favorite to come out of the National League. Kevin Pillar has been playing a fair amount here and there for Atlanta. Hard to know if he would necessarily be a starter for a World Series team or anything like that. But absolutely, Max Fried, if healthy, will be contributing to that for sure, contributing to the playoff push there. And Dean Kramer, I think, it's probably a Game 3 starter for Baltimore.
Solid part of the Orioles rotation.
Probably Game 3 or Game 4 starter for Baltimore in a second round of the playoffs. So we'll see what happens as we get continuing on. But yeah, really just exciting to see Zach Gelof excel at this level.
Last thing I want to talk about before we move on, James, do you have another piece of news?
No, go ahead.
I wanted to talk about Leonard Fournette, Jewish. New Orleans born and raised, played for LSU, spent pretty much his entire life in the Southeast playing for Jacksonville and then Tampa. Sort of gave a big surprise at Camp Simcha this week, which is a camp in the northeastern United States. I think it's in New Jersey, which is for Jewish kids who have chronic or terminal or serious illnesses, who are given the opportunity to have, a summer camp. I went to Jewish summer camp. I know you went to Jewish summer camp. So some kids who, to even what Leonard Fournette said, he is a professional athlete and the struggles he had compare not at all to any struggles that these kids have had. So he was there to teach some kids how to play football, to just hang out and experience some of the joy. And he said he's coming back next year. It was a big surprise. And he spent some time with them there. So big nachas for Leonard Fournette for giving back to not just the community, but specifically the Jewish community, which is pretty exciting.
No, really, really beautiful to see him do that. I will say also that I thought it was very funny that it's hot outside. He was wearing basketball shorts with the drawstring sticking out, dancing next to a set of guys with the tzitzits sticking out of the shirt. Very, very similar vibe, but slightly different application.
Anyways,
I was going to say we know Leonard Fournette isn't Jewish because he went to LSU instead of Tulane.
Alex Bregman went to LSU though, so they've had at least one Jewish student.
There is I guess Amanda and Kim, we talked about this before, but there's some interesting history into why Jews go to Tulane, and someone did a TikTok a little while back about the spread of I can't remember what it was that it spread to, but that it was game day culture, especially the way women dressed, female university students dressed for games, has spread through Jewish sororities at various Big Ten schools in Tulane, directly influenced by Jewish summer camp color war traditions. It was an interesting philosophy, and it was an interesting theory, and just saying that it was basically saying that the way they dress at certain schools in the South that tend not to have as big Jewish populations is much more formal and fancy, and that the way they dress at Big Ten schools like Northwestern or Tulane and other ones that have a larger Jewish contingent,
which is
more solid color, comfortable clothing, the dress for color wars.
What is college sports if not highly organized macabre?
Yeah, I mean, it's all sort of part and parcel of the same thing. Anyways, we'll need a cultural anthropologist of some sort to really give us a thesis on that.
Yeah, for example, if you go to Northwestern, if you go to Northwestern, do you just get the purple sweatpants? Do they just show up in your dorm room on your first year?
I think probably it's there's a uniform and you sort of check into that. I don't know, Mordecai Richler always wrote about the guys in McGill wearing big sweaters with M's on, the red sweater with an M on it. And it's
I have a gray one.
It. Yeah. But at some point in the 50 years between him writing that and us going to McGill, people stopped wearing that. And I would say it was a school with very little school spirit. If you saw someone wearing a McGill shirt, it was kind of probably because they were giving a tour, or we're working, we're working somewhere, and it would be weird for someone just
going back to Berkeley. You think about what are their color. I think it's like honey and blueberry or something like that. But like you imagine like a cowl shirt,
right?
Which is just part of
it.
Different
schools, different traditions, but I do believe there is a Jewish connection, and that Jews have influenced the like the college like game day makeup and outfit and all that, and it's something we should think about in the future.
Here's the other question: do you then Jews go to more colleges that have solid, not multiple colors? You've got your Northwestern purple, Tulane solid gold. Like, is this a thing that they do?
Good question. I do think it is interesting that Jews in the United States that like tend to group at certain colleges. There are certain universities that tend to be more Jewish, and there's reasons for that. Like, there's reasons why Jews congregate in all kinds of areas, but I don't know that anyone's like really explained to me like this is why there's a Jewish Michigan community and there isn't one at a different school, or like I think that like that there is a Tulane,
if you're
not
not
LSU,
Brandeis,
right?
It wasn't necessarily intentional.
No, I mean at nominally, at not nominally, at actually non-denominational big state schools, that there's some are considered more Jewish and not the others. Anyways, why don't we move on now to our interview with AJ Edelman. Well, we're very pleased to be joined tonight by Israeli Olympian AJ Edelman. AJ, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
AJ, right before we started, you had a very cute dog in the room with you. Who is that?
That's Lulu. Lulu, you want to come here? Hold on just a moment.
I should remind you this while we are looking at each other. This is a audible medium, so our audience can't see a very cute Shiba Inu, I believe. We'll try to get a picture of Lulu into the show notes somehow, and she's attempting to wave. So
yeah, he knows.
Very
he knows
cute dog.
He gets cheese if he does everything right. So he's just here for the cheese.
So AJ, can you tell us a little bit about your past and future Olympic journey? Why don't we start with your making it to the 2018 Olympics? I think that's something we really want to talk about.
All right, absolutely. So no one's even seeing this visually. I can literally just do any wackadoodle thing that I want. Like I could pick my
we'd prefer if you put your clothes back on.
But
my journey in sport began at age 3, and it started because my parents, I think, they made a very conscious decision that would very positively impact our family, and for better or worse, has set me on the path that I currently tread, which was that we were going to be in active end sports. They were going to provide the kids with the opportunity, should they want to reach for athletic goals. And I'll forever credit them for that, because as we'll talk about in a very short bit, my life has been dedicated to changing the narrative around what people in the Jewish community perceive that sort of option to be. So they put me on skates at age 3, and I ran or skated with it and run with it and skated with it. I continued to play hockey from youth through university, finishing my hockey career at MIT. In senior year of university, the Israeli hockey team came a-calling. They extended him an invitation to move to Israel and play for them. I was having a discussion when considering this, and this is back in 2014. I was having a discussion with the alumni director of my day school in Boston named Mike Rosenberg. And Mike had told me that if I was going to go further in sport, it would be the furthest that any of the alumni from the high school had ever gone. And already playing at a university not named Yeshiva University or Brandeis, I think only one other athlete from Maimonides school had ever done that. That to me really, something just really struck me. It was the statistical anomaly of thousands of Jews passing through a school and not a single one of them achieving a particular level of sport. That to me just seemed wrong. It seemed off. It became fully clear to me that there is this abrogation of responsibility that has taken place over the generations that has robbed Jewish youth of a pathway of self-development, fulfillment, and representation in sport. If I was going to make a career-altering decision to pursue sport at a high level, that it had to change this narrative. It had to have a communal effect. And to do that, I had to get a platform. And your platform as a hockey goalie from MIT is not so large, right? It's almost as much of a joke as people thinking Jews in sport is MIT people in sport. MIT has far more Nobel laureates than Olympians. But the platform that I wanted to achieve could only be achieved through the Olympic Games, I thought. I had never watched Cool Runnings. I had never seen the sport before, but I saw it on the news that Steve Holcomb, who is the most accomplished U.S. bobsledder of all time, tragically passed away in 2017. He had made the national team for the upcoming Sochi Games. This is back in October 2013. You know, I'd had all these discussions. What do I want to do? And I'm a winter sport athlete. And so I thought, why not give bobsled a go? So like a madman, I have serious ADD. And one of the big things about ADD is that you get hyper focused on just one thing until you figure it out. It was something like 72 straight hours of just deep dive into the sport, trying to figure out how to connect with Israel, whether there was an Israeli bobsled team. There was. It was started in 2002. At the time, in 2014, that I was researching this, they had gone about 8 years without really having a team together. Finally, I was sent to Lake Placid, not to try bobsled, but to try skeleton. The reason that I was told to try skeleton is because I was told that I was too small for bobsled. And after 5 days of trying the sport, they sat me down, they gave Israel a scouting report, and the scouting report was, you are not equipped for this sport. You are not what we would call athletic. You will make it down the track, and that'll probably be the most of it, and you will not make the Olympics. And when I heard that, there was like the chutzpah kind of thing inside that was like, tell me I won't, so I will. But there was also just the thought that if my goal is to go out and talk to kids and talk to Jews about how wonderful sport is and how if we just have a little bit of a push, we can really do some great things in sport, then what better a story to go and talk to kids about than I was told to hang up the shoes, essentially 5 days in.
Wow.
And so it sounds like you, as you say, you set yourself an 8-year goal and you made it well ahead of that as you qualified for the 2018 Olympics in Pyeongchang and finished. And I would say, I don't want to undercut the point of the story that you're telling, but you finished not in last. And I think like that is obviously worth celebrating. Any finish would have been impressive, but you know, you came within a few seconds of the best people in the world. You know, obviously it's a sport like many of the Olympics that is measured in the fraction of a second, but you acquitted yourself very well. I think it was very, you know, a lot of Jews around the world and the Israelis were proud to see, are proud and surprised to see Israeli representation in the Winter Olympics. But we saw you there competing and doing better than just making it down the track. I think it's fair to say.
I appreciate that very much. I hope people do take as much joy in Israelis competing in sport as I do. I know certainly many people out there do. Going into the Olympics, there was it was a self-imposed responsibility that I thought was important that I address during the Olympic season. And that was, there is a very large volume of evidence that skeleton athletes in particular face some very debilitating head injuries. And is because their head is constantly striking the ice.
Right.
Your head strikes the ground and it accelerates and decelerates at essentially 980 meters per second. And that,
if I recall correctly, there was a Georgian athlete who died in 2010 in Vancouver.
That was luge
on the track. Is that?
Was
that luge?
He was launched from the track, but the sport is very dangerous. But suffice to say that in the middle of my competitive run, I was taking 3 to 4 times as many runs a day as other athletes to try to bridge this gap that I had, because I couldn't afford a coach and I was pretty fanatic about everything. And so I put my qualification on hold in the middle of that season to invent a system that would eliminate head injuries in the sport of skeleton. And I'm very proud to say that over the course of a few weeks in Germany in December of 2017, that system came into fruition. It worked magnificently well. And I used it in the final couple of qualification races en route to the Olympic Games. At the Olympic Games, it was disqualified by a jury member in particular who made some extremely anti-Semitic comments when he disqualified it. He told me that you people make all the rules, not today.
Wow.
called me Herr.
Wow.
He called me Herr Edelman. In his very thick German accent. It was very, very tough. But the reason that I was always so proud of this performance is that they disqualified the helmet sled setup about 20 hours or less for the competition itself, when I would have no opportunity to train on my old system. You don't want to finish last. And you don't want to make it such that Israel, whose Olympic Committee is notoriously harsh when it comes to even accepting the invitations of winter athletes. If you're not going to medal, in the past, if you weren't going to medal as a winter Israeli athlete, they might not even send you.
We've heard that from Israeli athletes in summer sports too, frankly.
Yeah,
have trouble finding support from the Israeli Olympic Committee.
Right. It's not just support. The Israeli Olympic Committee at a certain point for bobsled and skeleton was just not going to send bobsled and skeleton athletes, even if they qualify. Because their view is this sport is not done in Israel. It's something that unless you're in a medal opportunity, we don't want to deal with it. And there's insurance that has to be paid on athletes to, in case you're captured and kidnapped, things like that. And so what made me so proud was that the performance that was put down on essentially what was brand new equipment to me on the day of competition was very, very good.
And you made another attempt in 2022, or in the lead up to 2022, to qualify in Beijing. And I understand, the degree to which you missed qualification for the Olympics is basically negligible in terms of how close you came. I can only imagine that was heartbreaking after the amount of work that you put in to get there.
I had retired after 2018 in the middle of lockdown. I was in New York, and everyone had to stay inside. And I connected with the producer or the director, Jonathan Kesselman, of a movie called The Hebrew Hammer.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And he and I had talked for years because my nickname while sliding was The Hebrew Hammer. And so we had just remained in contact for years. And he had asked at that point, while I was, just Zooming him, whatever happened to that documentary that you were going to try to make about making the 2018 games, and whatever happened to that bobsled team that you really wanted. And I thought at the time, this seems like the perfect opportunity to start the bobsled team, because everyone in the world is kind of just shut in, and maybe I can make something special happen. Just because what had become so apparent to me is that while I tried to talk to people, I always had to start the conversation with, well, do you know what bobsled is? Skeleton is a head first. Right. And so that is a very poor way of starting a conversation, right? It's the other.
Trying to put a bobsled team together for the Olympics was like your version of getting into sourdough. It sounds like in the peak of the lockdown, and then you're talking to everybody about it, I assume.
Well, so the team ended up being a very special team.
So what is in store? What is involved in getting ready and attempting to qualify for 2026? Is it just training nonstop? Is it participating in the upcoming in World Cup seasons, or what's good? Or does it all come down to the last few days, like the previous attempt?
Everything always comes down to the last 4 months when it comes to the Olympic qualification. Running a team is incredibly complex. You, as an Israeli, you get no financial support from the Olympic Committee whatsoever. The budget, our operating budget, is about $250,000. So all of the aspects of the team come down to what I can put together. That's fundraising, sponsorship, recruitment, hiring coaches, logistics of where we're going to live, the plane tickets of the athletes, their personal housing, the logistics of moving the sled around, which cost $8,000 to $10,000 every time you ship one across the ocean.
Wow.
Sourcing of all the different equipment, jackets, shoes, all these different things are what I work on every day. That's where I'm at right now. It's the off season. There's a lot of preparation that goes into making a successful season, but you need to set yourself up for success on a long-term basis by executing on the short.
I assume there's how many sliding tracks are there, like in the U.S.? I assume there's Lake Placid. I assume they're saying in Salt Lake City still. Is there much more than that?
It's a great question, and it ties into, you asked where we slide. There's something like 11 or 12 active tracks in the world.
Okay.
Building a bobsled track is a $100 million plus endeavor to build, and then to run it is multiple millions of dollars, because it's essentially a refrigerated, mile-long hockey rink outdoors.
Sure.
And so you build this colossal snake-like concrete thing. You super cool it, you put ice down on it, and that's where we slide. So the only people who would ever build a bobsled track are people who are hosting Winter Olympic Games, Or if you're the Germans and really love the sport and do it recreationally, you do luge and bobsled and skeleton for after school events, you might build a track or two not at Winter Olympic venues.
Wow.
In your relationship with Israeli hockey, it's interesting. We've had a lot of athletes that sort of tie in with, your story here. We had a U.S. Olympic hockey player who went through the same situation you did and did go to Catholic school as a Jewish kid in Boston. A guy named David Warshawski, who played on the team in 2022, I guess it was. It was during lockdown and he was living in Germany when we spoke to him. But he had a very similar story to you, but he stayed, he went on the path and then went to BU and then ended up playing in the NHL. But I'm curious, as to go back to your story, we hear a lot about a lot of Jewish athletes. We find you went to MIT. We tend to talk to a lot of Jewish athletes, especially on various Israeli national teams who are American, who also go to some of the more, higher of the higher learning, schools in America. There's the Israeli baseball team has Yale alumni, it has Harvard alumni, it has Princeton alumni. I'm curious, why you think that. I have a theory as to why that phenomenon exists, but I'm curious to know what your theory is.
So I think what it comes down to is that athletes are essentially people who want to challenge themselves to be the best that they can be. And in an environment a Jewish environment, which places so much emphasis on learning or on being at least learned, that goes part and parcel of your drive to be the best that you can be. Because it's very seldom have I come across an athlete who, if it's in a major sport for which they can make millions of dollars, of course it will be the thing, right? Because you have to maximize that chance. But if you're in a position for which you're trying to make something happen for yourself, but you also want to make life happen, I think those Jewish values are very heavily emphasized, by everyone around you, and that it comes out in academic success.
We should say, AJ, it's a very inspiring story, and I think you should rest assured that you have achieved your goals. Obviously, practically in terms of the Olympics and things like that, but just in terms of reframing the conversation, I think about what Jews can do or what Jews should aspire to, and I'm sure that there are young kids out there that you heard you speak, have seen your story, and are going to be led by the example that you're setting. So, can no harm with that.
I appreciate that very much. However, I am constantly reminded every day, multiple times, that the job is not even nearly close to done. And I'm reminded of that because the team, every day, one of my responsibilities is to knock on doors and basically say, would you be a part of this team? Both from an athletic side, right? If I call up athletes all over the world who might be a good fit for the team, or Israelis, and say, would you like to be a part of something very special? And a great many of them are of the opinion that it's just not important to do as a 23, 24, 25-year-old. But the more painful aspect is what I think Jared, the skeleton athlete who came after me, we started what we wanted to be our legacy. We called it Advancing Jewish Athletics. It's a nonprofit that was designed to alleviate the financial burdens of athletes like ourselves who, in the Olympic season or in the preseason, I seldom got more than 4 hours of sleep, which is a very, very detrimental thing to be doing when you're training for an Olympic Games. It is a huge problem. The reason I got 4 hours of sleep or less every night is because the team was constantly, it was just always on the verge of insolvency. I just couldn't with the team anymore. And we're still in that kind of similar position now in which there's just not an appetite to support Jewish athletes in the way that we want it supported.
The Olympics love stories like you guys. It comes to mind, there's the U.S., if we're talking about winter sports in Pyeongchang, the curling team from the United States who lost their funding. They weren't good enough. And they sort of decided, okay, let's get our day jobs again. We're going to start this. And then they, unfunded, won the gold medal. So you hear stories about like that, things. And you think, and I think if I was a sports team owner, I'd want to get in on that opportunity because it's a big story.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right. Sport principles are universal. You can swap out anyone's name, but the story remains the same. And I think that it's something that is very, very powerful and lost in the conversation when we talk about sport is that if the team had been able to afford a non-15-year-old sled in the Olympic season, that time differential would have been made up by leaps and bounds. And so the difference between a story being told of an Arab Jewish bobsled team that made the Olympics for Israel, that would be, I'm sure, turned into a documentary told for generations, was the fact that we couldn't afford a new $100,000 sled, right? In the grand scheme of things, the ROI on that $100,000 would have been eclipsed in 24 hours.
Sure.
And that's just when I do talk to people about sports, not to donors, but to kids and to parents, I generally tell them what you'll get out of this is you'll have stories to tell for the rest of your life, for yourself, to your children, to your friends. Sport affords you an opportunity to experience things as well as personal development and growth that money cannot buy.
That's great. I think we're going to have to end it there, AJ. Before we go, I just wanted to ask, so you've made the Olympics, your brother has a show on Broadway. Are your parents proud of you, or is there some third sibling who's just a doctor who gets all the glory?
The third sibling is Austin. He's the smartest of the bunch. He runs the MIT Hackathon, which is the biggest virtual reality hackathon in the world, 750 people.
Oh, wow.
He's absolutely incredible. If you ever come across him, he's the smartest in the family, the most athletic in the family, and the mensch of the family, speaking of Menschwarmers.
Wow.
He's terrific. We're all very proud of him. Mom and Dad are supportive and proud. They're terrific. I mean, I owe everything to my parents, right? If they had discouraged me at any point, I would never be here. And so I think, all credit to them. Everything that flows in terms of the success of any of the boys in our family, entirely due to Mom and Dad. So I'll never be able to thank them enough. But before we go, the team is still looking for athletes. It's always looking for athletes. So if you're listening to this and you're Jewish or you're Israeli, especially if you're Israeli, because I'm very proud of the fact that this team, I was the only American-born individual on the team in the Olympic round. It's very rare for an Israeli winter team to be all Israelis, Israeli. But if you think that you can push a sled fast, or if you know someone who can push a sled fast, send them this podcast and tell them to get in touch with me, because we are always recruiting and we will always welcome you to the team. If you're not good enough, you'll be sent home with a nice little care package. But it's very special. It's just an amazing thing to be a part of. So do get in touch. On Instagram, it's AJ Edelman or Israel Bobsled. If you're sending an email, it's my name, adam.edelman@olympian.org.
Thanks again, AJ. This has been great.
My pleasure.
Well, thanks again to AJ. That was really great of him to join us, and we, wish him lots of luck, lots of muzzle as he, prepares for the Olympics and gets that team together. Do contact him if you are a fast, strong Jew who wants to push a sled.
That's right. And or if you feel like sponsoring a bunch of fast, strong Jews who want to push a sled.
Yeah, that's true.
Big sprinters. Jewish people tend to be neither sprinters nor big. So some of those people, he talked about, AJ talked about being potentially too small for bobsled. So unfortunately, that role on the team is probably taken. But if you're on the larger side.
But, I think generally speaking, like we're big proponents of his thesis about, getting Jews in sports at all levels, at all levels of competition. So if you are a Jew with disposable wealth that would like to be involved in sponsoring the Israeli bobsled team, get in touch with them. You can use your money. Any amount, will help. So we're usually not out here stumping for anyone, but, it's a big endeavor. And it takes a lot of work.
We want to put our listeners' money where our mouth is. So if you guys could help us do that, I should ask Jamie. For those of you who don't know, Jamie is a substantive man. Have you ever considered pushing a bobsled?
I don't think I would fit in a bobsled. I mean, I am. I'm a larger than normal individual. I'm 6'3" as well. I think I might be a little tall.
I was referring to the height, nothing else.
Oh, just the height, not the corpulence. I don't know. I haven't gotten in the bobsled since I was a kid, and the bobsled ride at the Science Center.
Yeah.
So I'll have to go again. I'll have to go check that out before they ship everything down to Ontario Place. Anyways, I wanted to mention to all our listeners as well, if you are in the Toronto area, we are going to be having a live event. It is on September 12th, and it will be up at the Prosperman Y. we will be joined by a guest who is a very prominent Toronto sports media figure. I'll say we don't have all the details yet, but it'll be in the evening on September 12th. So we are very excited about that. Keep your eyes peeled for more information about that.
Yeah, and let's talk to him in front of the audience is what I think I would say.
Yeah. So it will be a live event for non-Toronto area people who can't make it. We will put that out as a podcast, certainly. But we're very excited about this. This is sort of part of an initiative the CJN is doing. So we're excited. We're really excited about that. So keep an eye on this space. This is. Do people call JCCs wise? Please let us know if you're a listener. My producer Michael is telling me that it's not called the Prosperman Y. It's called the Prosperman JCC, and I have always referred to it as the Shepherd Y or the North Y or the Prosperman Y. So interested to hear people's comments on this and whether it is appropriate to call it a Y. I mean, the Y in YMCA stands for young, and like I get that it's short for YMCA or YMHA. I guess is actually used in New York at the not what used to be called, no longer called the 92Y, by the way. It's the 92NY now. Yeah, I think very controversially, or at least to people's discontent. I don't know about controversy, but people are annoyed about that. Anyways, we will be having an event at the Jewish Community Center on Bathurst Street, north of Shepherd Avenue, in the Don Valley, on September 12th.
Yes,
and we are really looking forward to it.
Where the Camp Shalom bus picks up the children.
Sure, you may know it as the terminus of a UJA Walk with Israel. You may know it as the place your uncle took you to swim when you were a kid.
The Holocaust Museum.
You may have gone to an elite basketball camp there. There are many applications of the Prosperman JCC. But anyways, until then, as always, we're brought to you by the Canadian Jewish News, produced by Michael Freeman. You can find our content at the Canadian Jewish News website, thecjn.ca, and find us on Twitter /X at Menschwarmers. And, we're still out there. Still out there tweeting.
Do we,
still posting?
Are we, because it's a Jewish athlete, if the Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk fist fight ever happens, do we cover it?
We should try to get, absolutely. Yeah. We should live stream it. Yeah, if it ever happens.
That's a Jewish athlete.
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of takes on it. So I'm interested to, if that happens, we'll have to profile it. But
Zuckerberg,
I think it's not.
We never talk about Israel Adesanya on this podcast, who is not Jewish, but is named Israel.
Yep, that's true. Anyways, until next time, thanks for listening.